Yo, 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 it's your girl Rose Gold, and you are tuned in for another episode of Heartbreak Hill Podcast. I got some good stuff for y'all today. We're going to talk about a topic that is really and truly near and dear to my heart, okay? We're going to get into talking about toxic parents, okay? Toxic parents. Now, obviously, you can have all different types of toxic family members, right? That goes without saying. But I wanted to specifically point out parents that are toxic because I believe that our parents, while they deserve a high honor, they should be in a category of their own when it comes to how to deal with difficult relationships with them. You feel me? All right. Now, just a little bit of background about myself. We all about turning pain into power on this show, so I'm not gonna hold nothing back from y'all. All right. And it's very rare that I'm gonna talk to y'all about stuff that I have not experienced or hold interview on things that I have not experienced. So kind of my own little story is that I grew up. I'm the oldest on both sides, my mother and father side. I have a total of six siblings. Okay, my mother and father were on drugs for as long as I could remember as a child, from even before I was born. Okay, my father was a pimp, and while they were loving parents and they did the best they can, they did both have very, very, very toxic attributes. Much better now, but this is just growing up as like a preteen. First of all, as a child, then into being a preteen, and then also being a young adult in my early 20s, late teens, 19s, 18s, things like that. And I want to just first off, kick it off by telling you that your parents are worthy of honor and respect no matter what they do. Alright? Now, that doesn't mean that you have to condone your parents being toxic to you, but you do need to respect them at all times. So, if your parents are toxic individuals, and I'm going to get into that criteria a little bit in a second, but I just want to do this disclaimer because I feel that sometimes we think that because somebody is toxic or disrespectful to us, that it's our responsibility to defend ourselves and to point out to them where they're wrong and to maybe even correct them. And I agree that sometimes that is the case. But I also want to point out that when it comes to your parents, there's already a mandate on your relationship with them, which is that if you read the word, it'll tell you very clearly. God talks about you honoring your parents has an automatic promise attached to that, okay? As well as dishonoring them. So if your parents is acting crazy, they acting toxic or whatever they may be doing, man, that's not right. Sometimes you respect them by distancing yourself from them. If you at their house or whatever and they being disrespectful, it's okay for you to leave. You see what I'm saying? And create that distance to keep you from saying things that would get you in trouble ultimately with God. Alright? Now, when it comes to toxic parents, toxic behavior can show itself in all types of different forms, right? But if you have toxic parents, they may exhibit maybe verbal abuse towards you or other family members. They may call names, they may bring up personal hurtful things to hurt you, they may talk about you to other family members in a very distasteful way. Okay, a lot of times these parents may also suffer from addictions of their own, whether it be drugs or alcohol. Maybe they don't really have a strong family support system, so they may be isolated a little bit. They may be miserable in other areas of their lives, maybe within their relationship or marriage. Maybe they have a strain on the relationship they have with their parents. Okay, um, regardless, the toxic behavior you'll know based on the energy that they exhibit when you're around them, based on the things that they may say and the things that they may do. Okay, um, when it comes to handling them, as I stated earlier, your parents are always going to be worthy of respect no matter what. All right. But it's up to you to kind of bridge that gap in regards to forgiving them. All right. Creating distance from toxic parents is not bad. In fact, boundaries are biblical. All right. Guard your heart through and through and through. Okay. Protect your peace. Very important. So, distance is not unbiblical. Unforgiveness is. Okay? Unforgiveness and distance are two separate things. When you decide to distance yourself from your parents because they're being toxic. And I don't mean distance as far as not talking to them, okay? I mean distance as far as maybe you can't visit as often as you should because you know that they're having or they're experiencing that toxic behavior and they're spreading that to the world around them. You see what I'm saying? So maybe you can't go over there as often as you like, or maybe you can't answer your phone every single time that they call you because they're talking about toxic things, okay? That's different. Distancing yourself will be more so of instead of going to their home, maybe you invite them out to eat. Maybe you don't answer their phone call every time they call, but you do make it a point to speak to them at least once a week. That's distance. Unforgiveness would be more like I'm not speaking to my parents because of what she said to me when I was 5 years old. Alright? Or I'm not going to talk to my father because he wasn't there when I was growing up and I hate him for that. And all you're doing is hurting yourself because one thing you got to remember about your parents, you didn't pick them. The significance in that is that your parents were ordained to you to be part of your destiny, regardless of the role that they played in your life. All right? God did not randomly wake up one day and said, Tierra, I'm going to give you parents that's on drugs. One of them is going to be a pimp, and then the other one that raises you, she's going to be verbally abusive to you, and it's going to mess with your self-esteem. God didn't intend for that to happen. What he did intend to happen, though, is for those to be my parents and for the way that they grew me up to be part of my testimony and part of my story. You feel me? So I'm saying all of that to basically say that your parents were given to you by God, regardless of how they act out their role as your parent. All right? How they treat you is between them and God, and nobody gets away with hurting their children. Okay? What's not okay for you to do is to hold on to that unforgiveness because it will literally rot your bones. My mother just came back from seeing her mother. They had a kind of a strained relationship after 12 years. Lots of unforgiveness was there, but man, I'm telling you, when she came back, she was an entirely new woman. For myself, I spent a long time being upset at my father for not being around like he should, and it suffered. It showed. It showed in all of my romantic relationships. I was upset with my mother because while she was there, most of the time she was on drugs, and I was just sad. I was hurt. I was angry, and it wasn't until I decided to release and forgive my parents that I was able to really and truly move on to the destiny that God had for my life. Y'all feel me? So how did I go about forgiving my parents? Well, the first thing I did was obviously I prayed, asked God to help me. But another thing you have to realize about your parents is that they are operating from their level of understanding when it comes to raising you. Even if your parents decided to send you off to another family member, which did happen to me from the ages of 11 to 14, I did, go and live with another family member. Even when they do that, your parents are only operating from their level of understanding. And what you have to know and why that's significant is because your parents are only going to give you what they're able to give. They're only going to give you what they've been shown. And so when you realize that fact, you are able to extend grace to the areas that they lack. Unless, at least you should be. You feel what I'm saying? You should be able to come to terms with the fact that, yeah, your parents were not the best. But how about they're only giving you what they know how to give? And any mother or father on this earth will tell you whether they take care of their children or not, whether they have custody of their children or not, having a child changes your entire life. Do you understand what I'm saying? And the older that I get and the more I see parents struggling, single moms, single dads, whatever the case may be, having children changes your whole entire life from thought process to decision making to everything about you. You change. You see what I'm saying? And some people cannot handle that pressure. And so what God will do in terms of that is he will surround you with a support system, maybe through school, through church, sometimes even in the streets. They will surround you with family members, quote unquote, that will lead you into the right direction. Not sing you off, you know what I'm saying? Not to tell you to hold the pack or to go and beat the block up. No, that ain't what I'm talking about when I say God blessing you with outside members. But I'm saying if your parents lack in certain areas, God will send people that will be able to help you. I know there are plenty of women and men in my life that God has sent to me along my journey. When my parents couldn't be there for me, they were. And y'all know who y'all are. Good shout out to y'all, all right? Now, when it comes to forgiving your parents, how do you do that? I kind of touched on it, went off on a tangent. You first want to start off by understanding that your parents are operating from their own level of understanding. All right? When you realize that, what you also should do is you should write down a list of things that maybe they have done to you, or maybe perhaps your siblings or other family members that have hurt you. Write down the things that you can think of. Take about 10 to 15 minutes a day. It took me about a week to finally compile my list. You feel me? You compile your list of things that your parents have done to hurt you. And then once you compile that list, you ask God for wisdom and understanding. Why may they have done these things? Perhaps your parents are verbally abusive because they suffer from low self esteem, or maybe their parents were verbally abusive to them. Perhaps you were abused by your parents. Maybe they were abused growing up. And this is not a form of excuse making. This is to get you to a level of understanding, because understanding cancels out anger. All right? Let me say that again. This exercise, you writing down the things that they've done and then asking God for wisdom and understanding about what they've done, is not to make excuses, but it's to get you to a level of understanding, because understanding can cancel out anger in most cases. You understand what I'm saying? So once you have wrote down your list, once you have asked God for wisdom and understanding, at that point, what you need to do is you need to take that list and you need to ask yourself, what am I gaining by holding on to these hurtful things? I can bet my last dollar you gonna come up with the answer, absolutely nothing. And you need to take that list and you need to destruct it. I personally burned my list. You feel me? After I did, wrote down the things I asked God, for wisdom and understanding. And I thought on that list, for a few days. And then, I went on ahead and I burned it. You can flush it, tear it up, whatever you want to do, and then make a decision. The last part of forgiveness that people don't really talk about, it's not always this big emotional transformational thing that happens. You feel me? Sometimes it's just really a decision that, you know what, I was hurt by this, but I'm going to decide to let it go. And when I look at this person, I'm not going to think about it no more. Now, forgiveness is powerful, so you can't do it on your own. You is going to need help from the Holy Spirit. You is going to need help from God, but doing it is going to change your life forever. You know what I'm saying? And for those of you who maybe have siblings that are still experiencing maybe, the toxic behavior of your parents, as you continue to pray for your parents, still continue to reach out for your siblings that are maybe younger than you or older than you, that are still under that roof, because they still need help. Never condone disrespect from your siblings to your parents. Don't ever agree with that. Talk to them, mentor them, nurture them, show them how they should behave when your parent is exhibiting toxic behavior, or tell them about it. I know for me, my little brothers and sisters, whenever they go through stuff with my mama, I tell them first and foremost, or my daddy at that, I tell them first and foremost, look, man, that's your mama. And while she not right, you ain't gonna be right if you tell her that she wrong either. Your best bet is to be quiet and to either go and get some air. You could call me, you could talk to me. I got my own crib. You could come over here, but never condone disrespect from your siblings to your parents. You feel what I'm saying? Um, I only talk about things on here that I know is gonna help y'all. I hope this episode on toxic parents can hopefully drive that wedge between the relationship that you may have with your parents, man, because really and truly, they are sent from above. No matter where your relationship is with your parents right now, no matter even if they're still toxic, please, 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 please forgive them. Please, please, please do your due diligence to try and patch that relationship without submerging yourself in that toxic behavior. Still try to bridge that gap between you and your parents, because you only get one set. You understand what I'm saying? And no matter how rotten they are, they were given to you by God to shape things inside of you, to grow things inside of you, to teach you things. You know what I'm saying? I told y'all my mama was verbally abusive, man. Look, my self esteem is bulletproof. You hear me? Listen, I don't care what nobody say. Listen, that growing up with that experience, and like I said, we on a whole different level now. But growing up like that, man, look, it made my self esteem bulletproof. I got something from it. You understand what I'm saying? My father doing what he did, it taught me the gift of gab. You see what I'm saying? It all will work out, and it's up to you to turn that pain into power. You feel me? I thank y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of Heartbreak Hill, the podcast. If you have questions, don't hesitate to hit me up, heartbreakhillpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter, Heartbreak Hill Podcast. You can also hit us up on Instagram, Heartbreak Hill Podcast. Y'all stay blessed and don't forget, keep turning that pain into power. Yeah.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Heartbreak Hill Podcast. Our mission here is to use multimedia channels to break generational curses in our thought process. Our motto here is breaking hearts, blowing minds, one conversation at a time. Please note that our entire production is brought forth by listeners and viewers just like you. Thank you. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our website at heartbreakhillpodcast.com.